platform is Instagram. Cool. I think things are going. Hope folks had a good long weekend. If you have a long weekend where you're at, I have no idea what that's going to mean for attendance. Either people were at home doing nothing and they said, "Hey, I'll watch this stream before I get back into work." Maybe I have enough international people that watch that there's no holiday. We'll see. But yeah, hope folks had a good long weekend. Reminder for the folks in chat, if you are watching this live, if you want to do me a favor, send a message in the chat, and that way I could see if it's coming through. I just saw TikTok was giving me some issues. Interesting. I'll keep going though. No, it's working. This TikTok studio is so dumb. Every time I go to launch this thing, it's like there's a new update, and then it literally just put up a big banner on my screen. That's why I hesitated, and it was like, error connecting, it's not working. And then I'm seeing everyone in another window joining, so I don't trust it, but looks like people are joining. But yeah, if you're in chat, come say hello. That way I know your messages are coming through. I do like double checking that because I feel awful. There's been a couple of times where I'll go on LinkedIn after and someone's like, "Hey, you didn't answer me," and then I realize like the LinkedIn messages weren't coming through, so kind of silly. But yeah, definitely helpful if you let me know you're on. Today we are going to be talking about my last newsletter issue, which was my biggest fear in software engineering, and I've talked about this before. I'm just going to go put this link into the chat if you are on basically anything except Instagram and TikTok. If you are on TikTok or Instagram, if you just go to weekly.devleader.ca, you can follow along with the latest article there, but that'll be the topic for today. And like I said, I have talked about this before, and last week I had a good reminder that I was like, hey, I should go over this again because I think it's relevant. I think it's always helpful, and I wanted to make sure that when I wrote about it, I could have something that felt actionable. It's kind of hard to like put actionable advice together in a general sense. Like I want to write in a way that a bunch of people can take advantage of it, but when you do that, it starts diluting the message sometimes, I find, when you're trying to give actionable steps. So hopefully it came through okay, but that's the link in the chat if you have chat in front of you. But it's just weekly.devleader.ca, and then I'm going to dive into it. So I started off by saying, no, when it comes to biggest fears in my career, it's not going to be spiders. Although spiders are right up there with my normal fears. So the reason why this is top of mind for me was because this part's going to seem not relevant to software engineering, but I promise you it does all tie back. But my biggest fear is about being complacent. That might sound kind of funny. I don't want to make that sound like, I'm super like focused on everything must be ultimate productivity. I try to optimize things, but when I say complacent, I mean like not challenging myself, like not trying to grow, because I think the two biggest dangers with complacency are that, number one, you're not putting yourself in a situation where you're getting more growth. So you can work in an area, you can focus on it, you can build expertise, and that's great. You should do these things at different points in your career for sure. That's how you get better. But at some point, if you're constantly focused in the same area and you don't give yourself new opportunities, this is where you end up stagnating. And that's the second point that I want to make, is that complacency can sneak up on you. And that's really like what makes this a huge fear for me, is that you don't really realize it's happening until it's been going on for a while. And maybe even then you don't realize, but something kind of forces you out of it. So complacency for me is my biggest fear career-wise, because I don't want years to go past before I realize, oh crap, I haven't kind of moved out of my comfort zone. I haven't tried something new. I haven't been kind of forcing myself to learn. My mouth is super dry because I've been recording course content, which makes it difficult for live streaming. But the thing that made this top of mind for me, and this is the part that's going to sound not software engineering related, but I promise I'll bring it back, is last week I was at, so I've been doing CrossFit for a little bit now, a couple weeks now. I've been to a few classes, but I've been going to the gym for like 21 years now, consistently, like between like 5 to 7 times a week for 21 years. So I've been in a gym. I'm very familiar in a gym. I've done, uh, not competitively for powerlifting, but I've done powerlifting training. I have been on a bodybuilding stage before. I like going to the gym. I like training like a bodybuilder, and I like eating like a bodybuilder. It's boring. It's consistent. Works for me. I'm don't know why. Happy to do it. So I've been in a gym for a long time, but I had this recent change where I kind of left the gym that I was going to. I won't go into the details about that, but I switched, and I had told my wife that when I was older, surprise, I guess, if you look at the white in my beard, I guess that's happening right now. But I told my wife when I was older, I'm going to go join CrossFit and I'll do CrossFit with her. And I think from a health and longevity perspective, that makes a lot of sense. I think that that is better suited than bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is like, it's kind of unhealthy when you start to get heavier, even if it's muscle. Like I'm 5'4" and I weigh 180 pounds. Um, I've been over 200 pounds at 5'4", and like I get winded tying my shoe. Like that shouldn't happen. And it's because I'm not focused on other things like cardiovascular health and things like that. So I had figured like long term CrossFit would be a good thing. Get get my workouts and get my heart rate up. Great stuff. I like a lot of the Olympic lifting and barbell movements, so I'd get that there. Good. So I joined CrossFit, and it's been kicking my butt. And this was the reminder that like I put myself into this position, which is wildly uncomfortable for me. Not just wildly uncomfortable because I'm basically about to pass out during the workouts, like physically uncomfortable, but I mean uncomfortable in the sense where not that I was a professional by any means. I didn't have a pro card for bodybuilding, but I've been doing it for a long time. Like I understand how nutrition works. I understand how hypertrophy training works. I have pretty good, lifts for my height and my size. So I've been doing this for a while, and now all of a sudden I'm in a space still gym related, and it's like I've never been to the gym in my entire life. So I've completely reset is what it feels like. I'm the newbie now, which is a very bizarre feeling to go from feeling like I don't want to, again, expert is a bit of a stretch because I know there's people far more from a bodybuilding perspective far better than I am. So feeling like an expert to feeling like a complete newbie. And this was the reminder. So I ended up, I have a second YouTube channel that I started putting vlogs onto. When I'm driving, I record a vlog when I'm sitting in traffic. That way I can be talking and I can be getting ideas out. And this was one of the vlogs that I made, and I recorded this, and this went up on Friday, I think. So I put that into the newsletter. So if you're checking out the newsletter, there's a vlog entry there. It's from Code Commute is the name of the channel. And I guess I can put that into the chat as well. So if you want to check it out, it is here. This is the video. And the reason that I thought this was important is, again, it was a good reminder that we have these opportunities for growth, like very specifically when we are put into uncomfortable situations. Now, the rest of the newsletter article in this conversation is going to be about some of my experiences having gone through that and what the growth looked like, why it was uncomfortable. And then there's what I'm hoping sounds like actionable advice. So hopefully that sounds interesting. And of course, I forgot to remind people, I see more people joining the stream now. But if you have questions at any point and they're even totally unrelated to what I'm talking about, please just put them into the chat. I am watching chat across like 4 different windows here. So if you have questions about software engineering in general, career stuff, happy to try and answer, give my perspective. I try to remind people that like the live streams, I would much rather spend the entire live stream answering your questions. The last live stream I did was, I think, the most involved one I've ever had, which is awesome. But otherwise, like I could just record YouTube videos, right? So I would rather spend the time with you answering your questions. Okay, so I'm going to get into the next part that I was writing about, and the idea is, sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up on my newsletter. I lost the whole section. Oh, okay. So I'm going to start not from super early on, but at least just for my career. So like my professional career outside of university, because I had internships. The first part for me was basically joining a digital forensics company. So it was cool because I knew how to develop in C sharp. I had been programming in C sharp for a while now, but I joined a company that the entire domain was digital forensics. And one of the first meetings I had there was the founder asking us, like, you know, kind of onboarding us and being like, okay, who knows about file systems? And I just remember being like, oh no, like, what have I gotten myself into? I have absolutely no idea what this guy is talking to. But this was about to be my career. This is about to be my job for the next 8 years, was digital forensics and having to understand how these things work. So this was one of the first examples in my professional career where I remember going, I don't know anything about this. Can I develop software? Absolutely. Do I know anything about digital forensics? Absolutely not. But, you know, don't got a choice, accepted the job. I'm starting, I'm working. So what I uncovered over time was that over the years, and this, it's hard to realize when you're going through it, right? But over the years, I ended up becoming very well versed in digital forensics. I absolutely understood computer forensics, recovering deleted files from computers, working with internet history and things like that. These all just became almost like second nature. I don't want to say like a professional investigator, because that wasn't my job, but I was writing software that would recover these things. So that did become very comfortable for me. I'm going to pause for a second because there's a question in the chat. So on YouTube, hello. So I'm an average developer and team lead, working with a brilliant developer who has more knowledge than most of the devs in the company. Recently quit. Sorry, I don't know from your... sorry, I don't know if there's a question actually yet. And I can't tell if you recently quit or the developer recently quit. But if you want to keep elaborating, I'm happy to... Oh, there we go. Questions are delayed coming in. Sorry, recently has been slow on a task. I'm not sure how to approach that, especially because he's older and has been a lead, doesn't want to. How do I get him to complete the task that he has? Okay, this is a good question. So if I put my manager hat on, especially because what you're saying is you've observed other behavior before where someone's been consistent with something, right? In this type of situation, you're saying brilliant developer who's more knowledge than most of the devs on the team, but recently he's been more slow on a task. So this is a behavior shift, right? A lot of the times, and people don't, and sorry, when I'm saying people, I don't mean to, I'm not addressing you specifically. I'm just saying in general, a lot of people don't really recognize sort of behind the scenes stuff with management and dealing with people is really the people part. I think as software engineers are so focused on problem solving, building software, writing code, shipping things, that we don't realize that there's these kinds of interactions like are being described in the chat here that as managers we're often kind of tasked with trying to navigate. So when you see a shift in behavior, there could be a handful of things going on. And odds are there's more than one thing kind of compounding that's making this happen. It could be something as simple as something's been going on at home and they're not getting a lot of sleep and they're run down and they're a little bit demotivated, disengaged because of something like that, right? It could be something as sort of innocent and unrelated as that. And now you're kind of stuck there wondering like, like what's going on? It could be something more serious. It could be that, you know, they're starting to burn out, they're disengaged, and that needs to be addressed. Like it could be any number of things, from something that, you know, truly is something you can help and, you know, address at work. It could be something unrelated to work. It could be anything. I think one of the challenges here is like, and the reason you're asking is like, how do you bring it up, right? Because I don't think what you want to do is you don't want to this might sound weird. You don't want to change their behavior, like, and you can't. You can't like just say, "Hey, you, like, go back to working hard again." I know you know that. I'm just saying it out loud. But the idea is, I guess, two parts. One is like you want to understand it, because I think that's the first part, and I think it's the most important part is understanding what's going on. And to do that, depending on the situation, your working relationship with the person, might be kind of tricky to navigate. But there are ways to inquire without bringing it up and saying, "I see that you are not performing as well." That's the part that ideally I would try to steer clear of that in the beginning, because you don't want someone to get defensive about it. If you're just trying to start figuring this out, I would just engage in conversation with them and spend some time just trying to understand like how things are going in general. Genuinely, right? Because the one of the challenges here is that we can assume so much, and it could be literally anything like I said. So spend the time with this individual, have chats with them, understand a little bit more what's going on, and see if it starts to uncover itself. Now, the next part, and ideally, because you said this person is a good developer, generally, they're a good performer, they're very smart, is finding them ways to get engaged if it's something that can be addressed that way. If they're sharing with you that they're having some challenges outside of work and stuff, simply being present, letting them be heard, letting them know that they have a team to support them and stuff like that can help them get through a period. That might be all it is. However, if it's more systematic for this individual and they're kind of in a bit of a rut, I think that, again, letting them know that you're available to help, things like that, you want to, this is my opinion, by the way, is like find ways to try and re-engage them, which will be very situational, and find ways to let them know that their team is there to support them. Because I think something that can backfire here is if you lead with probably the obvious thing that we all want to say, which is like, "Hey, you, like, get back to working harder. You were working harder before." So my approach in this is, like I was saying, is trying to understand what's going on first, and then trying to let them know that they're supported. Because if they start knowing that they're supported, they might be more transparent about what's going on. That way, from there, it becomes a little bit more obvious for how you can assist, or even if there is an opportunity for you to. So I hope that helps and it wasn't too generic. If there's other details that you want to add and I can steer it a different way, let me know. I'm happy to try and answer. Okay, so as I'd mentioned, one of the first things that I had encountered was going through this process of learning digital forensics and kind of building up that expertise. Something that happened to me early on at that company, though, was another similar type of thing. And I'm going to start referring to these, at least in my experience, as like a forcing function. And the reason I say it's a forcing function is because sometimes there was little say, sometimes no say, sometimes little say. And the idea, and one of the sort of meta points of this whole talk, is that if you're like me, then you're not taking risks. I'm pretty conservative. I don't like taking risks. I will play it safe. And that's, again, why complacency is my biggest fear. So early on, I became a manager at this company. And I can remember there was kind of an option, kind of Volin telling me kind of an option, but they were a scaling startup and they said, "Hey, you can talk to the developers. So are you interested in, I guess labeled as team lead in the beginning, but I had up to like 13 direct reports with compensation view like very soon after." So we didn't even have like a senior software engineer title formally until a while, like years into it, because we don't know how to label this stuff as a startup. So for me, this is a forcing function. Put me into this totally awkward situation where I'm like, I have literally no idea what I'm doing. This is the kind of thing that's like, when people talk about imposter syndrome, this wasn't imposter syndrome. This was like, I am an imposter. I was absolutely an imposter to being a manager because I'd never done it before. I have no idea what I'm doing, right? But to like, I've been managing now for 12 years. So this was a pivotal part in my career, a forcing function that changed my involvement with something, a different skill set, different type of role. And ultimately, I learned a lot. I learned enough that I stuck around with it, continued to grow, and now I'm still doing that 12 years later. So there still room to grow? Absolutely. I'm not trying to say like I've perfected management now, but my point is that this forcing function gave me this opportunity to grow. So, um, now another example from this forensic company is this scenario. This one was a little bit more of a volunteer type of thing. Um, and Mars on Facebook. I'll answer your question in just a moment. If you want to add more specificity to it, like how I can answer it more particular, if you just mean in general, I can try. But if you want to be more specific, I can try and answer. But this next experience I want to share is like, again, at this forensic company, we had a situation where we were building some mobile acquisition products, and the way that the first initial project was going was, my personal opinion, was completely off the rails. I think it was going to be a financial disaster, and basically found myself with another colleague. We took it upon ourselves to go build a prototype on our own, and it worked. We showcased it, and like self-admittedly, like we had literally no idea what we were doing from a mobile acquisition perspective in digital forensics. Like, and what this means is like we started to build software that, if you gave me your phone, I could take all of the data off your phone, sometimes byte for byte copies of your phone, iPhone or Android. So did I know anything about this before? Absolutely not. Absolutely zero. So that project became a forcing function that would shape the rest of my career at this forensic company, because I was managing a mobile acquisition team of engineers. We also did prototyping, but I basically did that team as one of my core responsibilities for the remainder of my time there. So without that, I would not have gained the mobile acquisition knowledge that I have today. How much of that do I remember? Not sure, but it shaped my career, gave me tons of different experiences that I never would have had before. Okay, there's a handful of questions in the chat. Now I'm going to go back to Mars. So how's the difference feel as once you were a beginner and where you are now? So in some things I feel more confident, I think is the way that I would explain it. I've probably said this online before, but I mean, like these days, like I'm 35 now. I feel pretty confident in most things in my life. Like I don't do a lot of stuff, but I feel like a reasonably confident person. The way I would frame it, this is going to sound ridiculous. I don't feel like a piece of crap anymore. And I can remember in my early 20s, in my mid 20s, I had no self-esteem. I genuinely felt kind of like a piece of crap outside of work. At work, I felt great. I felt confident at work. I felt like I knew what I was doing. And what would happen is when I had these opportunities, I guess they were opportunities, these situations, these scenarios that were a forcing function, they took a bit of a toll every time in the beginning, because it was like all of a sudden something that I was confident about, no longer confident. So these days, in general, I find that I am reasonably confident about the things that I do. I have a beautiful wife. We don't have kids. We got lots of dogs. But like I have self-esteem now, and before I didn't. So I think over time, some of the things that I learned from work about having confidence in what I'm doing carried over. So it's kind of the outside of work part. But the other part that I want to mention is that there's still things in my career, which I'll get to in a moment, that are these forcing functions that make me feel like a complete newbie again. The big difference is that they make me feel like a newbie specifically in like a domain, but I still have all of my other experiences with me, right? It's not like I just forget everything that I did before, or I've never managed multiple engineering teams before. That's something I've done. Now I'm only managing one. Like, it's not like those experiences just go away. You build on them. They're just not your core focus, maybe at this point in time, and you have new things that you haven't experienced yet. So, by mixing these things in constantly, you always have this beginner feeling, which is uncomfortable. Okay, all day coding on YouTube. Thank you for the question here. So, could you share your view on how you evaluate the seniority of software engineers? Do you have your own scales and what you expect to see at each level? So I'm curious about both situations when evaluating colleagues you've worked with for a while and during interviews when you don't know the person that well. Okay, let me see how to answer this. There's a part that I don't know if I recommend doing necessarily, and so I'm going to jump around your question a little bit. I want to give you as good of an answer as I can. So when evaluating colleagues you've worked with for a while, if you're talking about just like understanding how well your peers perform, I would say this is probably not something you want to spend a lot of time doing, unless you have a use case or a scenario that I don't understand, which is entirely possible for the record. It's just not something I recommend doing because I think when you attempt to do this type of thing, you don't have enough context to understand them. So again, might be missing some details, but what I've seen before is, even engineers that report to me talk about friends they have or peers, and they go, so-and-so seems to be progressing faster, or why did they get promoted and I didn't? And they only have a lens that's, one part of it, but there's so much more to the picture that they're not getting. And generally, I find this type of thing makes people worse off. Like they're either looking for excuses or they're looking for something else, and it's not really positive. There are differences though when someone says, wow, like I see this person doing awesome. I would like to compare myself to them to understand areas that I could also get better. I feel like that's a positive framing for it. I just don't see it often. So that's why I'm kind of shying away from answering that part, because I don't think that it's super beneficial. But seniority of software engineers in terms of scale and stuff, I guess I have my own opinions, but at Microsoft and a lot of big tech companies and other companies in general will have generally some type of shared guidance on this. So at Microsoft, we have career guides, and I think internally in some organizations, we refer to them as the rainbow document. And the rainbow document has, it's basically a big rubric, and it talks about different criteria that we evaluate at each level. So for example, you could have a section for customer focus. You could have a section for, technical excellence, a section for innovation. A lot of these things, especially if you think about different companies, not just Microsoft, these will apply to key competencies or core values that company has. And they're trying to truly evaluate their engineers across that. Now, in our rubric, and I would suspect, I haven't worked at Amazon or Facebook or Google, but I would expect that they have something similar. Not going to be the same, but something similar. But with this rubric, when you go through these key competencies, the further you move to the right-hand side, which is like becoming a more senior engineer, you see kind of, I've talked about this idea before too, you see two dimensions improving. It's kind of like your circle of impact. So the more people and different roles you're working with, like that's growing, but also the scope of your impact, like the actual work you're delivering on will be bigger projects, more deliverables, potentially like team leading or tech leading different things. So you see all of that kind of show up across this rubric as you get into the more senior level. So I have to use this at Microsoft. I think it's good, by the way, especially because I agree with a lot of the stuff in it. It's not like it's a tool that I fight against, but I like that when we have conversations about rewards and promoting people, that we're not in a situation where, just to make something up, like if say on my team I was like, I'm going to try to get every single person promoted, like just so I look good to them, like to prevent that type of thing, I need to be able to use this rubric, this talent guide, and be able to articulate all of these things about their growth. And people will ask me like, what's the biggest area that they need to improve on? and I need to be able to refer to this thing. So I think it's really good for being able to level set things. Um, on the personal opinion side of this, I guess like something that I really value is, I guess, like initiative and also helping level other people up. And when I say initiative, I also mean like accountability, I guess, is a big part. So people taking accountability, like I can trust that they're the things that they're saying they're going to deliver on are delivered on. They're proactive about stuff, and they have no issue mentoring those around them. Because the more senior you get, even if you're not like formally leading people, my expectation is that more senior engineers will be leveling up those around them. So fortunately, a lot of that is very much in place at Microsoft in terms of expectations. So that's a good alignment for me. But all day coding, let me know if that answers your question. Sorry, I didn't want to answer the one part there, but I hope that makes sense. And if you have an alternative kind of angle, let me know, and I'm happy to try. Okay, I got a couple more examples from work experience, and then we'll move on to say, maybe some more actionable types of things. But the next part of my work experience is after the forensic company, and I've talked about both of these before. But so they're both from Microsoft. But the first one is when I joined Microsoft, and I was very transparent with the hiring manager, but I was hired into Microsoft to work and manage the part of the deployment team for, it's called Substrate, which is the infrastructure for Office 365. So they brought me on to manage that. I had zero experience working in data centers and zero experience deploying services. Zero. They were still interested. They knew, like I said, they knew. I'm not like tricking them. I didn't say, yes, I snuck into Microsoft. They full on knew, and they wanted me for my other experiences. So again, this was a forcing function. Now that I'm at the company, I don't know anything about deployment. I worked on the deployment team for 3.5 years. I will not say that I became an expert on deployment after 3.5 years. There's so much to learn and do in that space. But compared to when I started, absolutely grew. Absolutely grew. We had monolithic deployment systems. I got a second team in deployment that did all of the microservices that we were deploying. So I had these two completely different sort of paradigms that I was dealing with, and it was a tremendous learning experience. So again, forcing function, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have learned all about deployment. Mars back on Facebook here. As a 22-year-old girl, as a beginner still, they're challenging, and I was stuck me going on or just moving on. This live stream page of sharing all his best to new generations, I got so motivated and I'm grateful. Anyway, currently I'm at a school, still searching, listening to the podcast, sharing, by the way. Oh, thank you. So I'm glad if you're finding it helpful. Yeah, if you have any questions, please you can ask them in the chat if live here, or send me a message on social media if you want any help with something. I get lots of messages, so it's sometimes hard to catch up on, especially on Facebook. It's really difficult to follow up there. But yeah, if you're on, especially like Twitter, LinkedIn, that kind of thing, like that's a lot more visible to me. So I do hope that you find the content helpful, though. Okay, the last one I'm going to talk about is like a forcing function of my career was my current team. So this job opportunity for me was yet another one where I have zero experience in the space. And again, my boss and my boss's boss were both interested in me joining. They were very happy with my previous experience. It's just not in the same domain. So the first teams that I had at Microsoft were managing deployment, and this current team is a routing plane for the same part of the business. So it's a routing plane. I am responsible for firewall and DDoS protection and related technologies, but I don't have experience doing that, just like I didn't have experience doing deployment at Microsoft. So key thing here is that I have been able to demonstrate to individuals that I am able to learn and do a good job learning. And I think that's a quality that we want in engineers. This is something I look for in engineers, is like, if I don't care how much you know about something, as long as you're able to learn it. So this is something I've been able to live and I guess demonstrate to people, which is great, but it's also something I believe in. I wish I believed in it more for myself because, like I said, I'm very conservative and it's really difficult for me to put myself into a situation where I have a forcing function. So, so far in my career, it's been great to do this. So now I want to go over to some of the more actionable advice. I'm going to go do a full screen thing here so we can go through this part together. Let me put my face back on. I got to start my virtual camera though. Sorry. Boop. There I am. Sound effects were necessary. It needed a boop. If you are on Instagram, I apologize. This is going to look like garbage, probably. Okay. So this is one action that I wanted folks to take away. So I wanted to remind people that if you're ever in a situation that you're kind of like, you feel like a newbie all over again, it's okay. And the idea is like, remember, you're not losing experience. You might be in a spot where it is all new. There is a learning curve. That's okay. It's actually great, right? You're going to be growing and learning these other things. It does not mean that all of your other experience just vanishes. In fact, you can lean on a lot of the experience that you have from before and apply it into your current situation. So something important to think about. This next part, this that's highlighted. So leaning to the fact you're supposed to be a novice in this new domain. That was sort of the counter to the previous point. Is like, yes, you can bring along previous experiences, but the goal of that is not to resist. You don't want to be like put into a new spot and resist being new there. So yes, use previous experiences to accelerate, but accept that you are a novice in that space. Like, go into it with an open mind. Go into it accepting that you're going to be learning and it's going to be challenging, but like, these are good things. It should be exciting. It's going to be difficult because it's new, but it's exciting because you're going to be growing. I need more water. Okay. And all day coding, just checking your message there, but cool. I'm glad that helped. Let me know if there's anything else though, but I'm glad at least on the surface that helps. So that's good to hear. Okay. Next up is just this phrase, growth mindset. And for folks that haven't heard growth mindset before, it's a big Microsoft ideology. Like we talk about this a lot, but it's obviously talked about a lot outside of Microsoft. But it's this idea that we're not just like born with a set of skills, and then you're stuck with it. So like, you know, you weren't born knowing how to code, and it's like not in your genetics to be a programmer. So like, you're not going to be a programmer. It's this idea that anything that we want to get good at, if we put in the time and the effort and we try to learn and we repeat, that we will gain skills so that we can have this growth mindset. I will go apply myself, I will go learn, and you'll come away with these skills. So this is something that, again, I really recommend people take that to heart when you're in these situations, which is like, look, like it might be challenging, but if you put in the time and the effort, you will absolutely walk away learning a new set of skills that are going to be valuable for you. Okay, last part is going to be about taking action. I might, unless there's a lot more questions, by the way, I might wrap this one up an hour in, so another 20 more minutes or so. We can still jump over to Reddit and check some stuff out, but I might wrap it up because I got another busy period going on, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the last part of this article was about taking action. And that's because after I talk through all this, you might say, well, Nick, those are nice stories. Those are some nice points. That's lovely. But like, what the heck am I supposed to do here? That's a great question because I want this to feel actionable. I want you to feel like you can walk away and have something to think about here. So, this part right here, we can be proactive. We can seek out opportunities. So a lot of the examples that I can think of from my career where the biggest ones were situations that it was a forcing function. Like it was not me making the decision necessarily. It was something that kind of came up. I fell into it and then found myself going, "Oh crap, like I guess this is happening and I guess I got to figure it out." But those I've mentioned this already, but those are some of the biggest learning opportunities. So if we have this pattern where a big shakeup can lead to big learning opportunities, like why would we not try to go find that? So you might not be able to find huge ones, but you can still be proactive. So I've used this with my team before at different points in time, but like the example I gave here was like if your team's building full stack, but you keep finding that you're gravitating towards the front end. So you're as you're building up a skill set, you keep focusing in an area, you keep gaining expertise, it's becoming more comfortable. These are all good things, right? The the part here about being complacent is like, are you only taking them because you're avoiding the other things, right? If you're taking them because you're still learning, you're getting effective, you're getting better, that's great. But if you're like, okay, I'm just taking this because I can do it and I'm avoiding discomfort because the other things are challenging, I don't know them, that's a sign, right? That's a sign that you might go, that over there is uncomfortable. Why am I avoiding it? Maybe it's time that I go ask to go work in that spot. So this is something, depending on your manager, they might totally encourage it. They might, I can say this as a manager, we have to balance like your learning opportunities, the criticality of a deliverable, things like that. So if you don't express to your manager that you have these other interests, it might be difficult for them to go find that for you. So at least being open and transparent and sharing can help get you that type of scenario to work on. So we did a couple of things. Was it last year, 2 years ago now? So my deployment team has a lot of back end work, as you might imagine, for deploying hundreds of services. And I had individuals on my team that were saying, hey, it'd be really cool if there was like something I could do that was web development related, like some front end stuff. We just don't have that. Not in my core team, but there are like immediate partner teams within deployment even that have UI work. So because individuals on my team let me know, they helped create these opportunities for themselves. Because I could reach out to the other tech lead and the manager, and we were able to carve out some work for my employees to do. So now they're finding themselves in this situation where they're going, hey, this is new, this is uncomfortable, but they were proactive in trying to get those opportunities. I thought it was tremendous learning opportunities for them. They really enjoyed it. It was positive for the sort of the team that was receiving the work. It was good all around. So I do recommend you try doing this, right? It's two parts. One, if your interests are changing and you want to go look, great, ask about it. Or if you're finding, this is harder to do, if you're finding that you're just getting comfortable and avoiding discomfort, it might be time to go try something. So keep that in mind. And that's, I guess, this next part, right? So I said it's not always about siloing people into a thing they're 100% amazing at. So from a manager's perspective, I like, you might imagine that on paper, if I just said, okay, who's the best at thing X? Let me go put the best person for thing X on that thing. And then I go to thing Y and I say, okay, who's the best at this? Let me go put them there. And I keep doing this for every task. What happens is that people get siloed into different things. And sometimes, depending on, where they are at in their career and their level, it can be good to build the expertise there. Like keep exposing someone to something, they're building their expertise. But the problem is when you do this systematically and you never give people an opportunity outside of the thing that you keep siloing them into, now you have a team where the skill set is like very individual and specific for different people. And then there's this like no crossover. So one of those people leaves the team or they're out sick, they're on vacation. What now? No one can go do that thing that they're good at. Like it's not a good spot to be in. So I do like making sure that I can balance learning opportunities with effectiveness. I need to be able to do that as an EM. So I'm just saying this out loud because if you're like, oh, there's no way a manager would ever let me do that. Yeah, maybe your manager won't, and I'm sorry, but like you should at least ask. I think that's important. And the reason I put this here, start as small as taking on work items outside of your comfort zone, is because this is small. You're not saying to your manager, hey, I want to go switch to that team because they build different stuff. That might be an option for you. But if you just want to start small, get a little taste of what's going on, that might expose you to something. So that's how I would recommend doing it if you're too nervous about a big jump, just to get more exposure. Okay. And this last one I wrote here is for probably more senior software engineers. And it's not that more junior ones can't do this. It's just that you might find it a little bit easier. So when we're talking about the previous example of just trying out, a work item outside of your comfort zone, if you're more proactive, you might be able to start an initiative. And what I mean by that is maybe you're noticing something cross team, cross organization, like the scope of what we're talking about is a little bit bigger. You might realize inefficiency in the way that we do, you have a process or something in your code that needs to be aligned. But the reason that I think this one really fits well here is like, if you're not used to doing this, trying to get people involved from multiple teams to try and lead an initiative, even if it's not something that you're like 100% an expert in, can be a ridiculously good learning opportunity and shows that you have initiative and drive. So if you have a manager that will support you through this type of thing, this could be awesome, because now you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're like, crap, maybe I don't know exactly what I'm doing. And that's okay. You have support from your manager, right? But I think this type of thing for more senior engineers is really valuable. So if it feels like picking up the odd work item in a different part of the stack is like, that's not really doing it for you as a more senior engineer, you could try doing something like this. From my experience at Microsoft, and I know like I'm talking about just a Microsoft experience here, this type of thing is what I would say is more and more expected once you're at, like, I'm at principal level, the sort of the first level of principal. At my level and beyond, this is like basically starts to become an expectation that you are finding the initiatives and leading them. So I'm kind of at the part where that's not a super big focus, but I believe at my next level and beyond, that's where they're like, what initiatives are you leading? Not just what initiatives are you participating in? Which ones did you go identify something, go drive the results for it? And again, if it's outside of your comfort zone, even better for your learning opportunities. So I think that's it for the newsletter and the discussion. So we'll definitely be taking more questions if you folks have them in the chat. I will take this opportunity if you're still here, because there is some exciting news, and I'm going to switch over to this. But let me hide my chat for a second. But number one, I launched a new course on Dome Train for Reflection in .NET. So from zero to hero Reflection in .NET, I will put that into the chat here, so you can check that out. But there is something even more exciting than me just promoting my own courses, and that's at the top of the screen. There are huge discounts right now. So not just for my courses. Oops, I didn't mean to click that. There we go. I didn't realize it was a link. But yeah, you can get 30% off any course, not just Nick's courses. Although that would be cool if you'd be interested in my courses. If you get Dome Train Pro, it's 20% off. So that's a subscription model to access other courses. And then if you're looking for a bundle, so for example, I have a bundle on Dome Train that's these two courses together. It's already discounted, but you can get another 15% off. So if you are interested in courses, if you enjoy the way that I teach about C# and .NET, I would recommend jumping onto that, because I think that's a pretty good deal personally. Another thing that I'll jump over and, oh, nice. Infected FPS just got the 20% off annual earlier. Definitely going to check out the course. It's awesome. And Infected FPS, thanks for dropping in again. I love seeing like when I recognize the usernames and stuff. So it means a lot that you're here to support. And if you have any feedback, if you're checking out my courses and stuff, let me know. I'm always I'd always love feedback. It's hard when it's critical feedback, but it's the only way we get better, right? So, next thing I want to share, podcast. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the interviews that I do, sorry, that's probably blinding. I have everything dark mode, and this is not dark mode, but I have all of my software engineering interviews that I put on YouTube. If you want to listen to them on Spotify, you can also do that. Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. I'll put that link into the chat as well. You can check that out. I realize that not everyone wants to sit around for an hour on YouTube and watch a video, but if you're commuting, you're going for a walk, whatever, maybe you want to toss one of these on. They're conversational if you haven't heard these before. So definitely would recommend it. And I just wanted to share with you that these are on Spotify. Yeah, flashbang warning, please. I'm so sorry. I think this next one's also going to be super bright, by the way, so apologies for that. Actually, it's not so bad. This part of the page is pretty bright, though. I wanted to share it. Brand Ghost is also a thing that I'm working on, so I will put that into here. If you are creating content, if you see how I create content online, I use Brand Ghost to do that. So yes, I'm plugging this, but this is literally the thing that I'm building, and it's what I do for my own content. So I post to about 12 social media platforms every day. That link didn't go through. Sorry, the chat system is telling me that something went wrong, but I don't know. It's brandghost.ai. If you see how I post on Twitter, LinkedIn, everything, it's all done through BrandGhost. My comments and everything are me. My posts are written by me. I just don't schedule them every day or every weekend. They're done ahead of time. And so this is the system that I have built and what I use personally. So there is that. And then one more thing, I just got to get another tab open because I want to pull it up on YouTube. But one more thing, I will try to get it here. And this is what I mentioned earlier on in the stream. If you're interested in checking this out, so I'll pull that up here as well. This is another YouTube channel. So I have one, why not make another? This is where I'm putting my commuting vlogs. So when I do my drive into the office and back home, I'm going to try to make a vlog. If you see me looking at the camera like this, it's just because I'm getting it set up. I just talk in the car like you're sitting there with me and try to talk about software engineering concepts, career stuff, kind of like this live stream, but it's like a stream of consciousness in the car. So if you enjoy hanging out with me and you want to hang out with me a little bit more on a commute, this is what you can check out. So I'll be posting that regularly too. So those are all the things. Sorry for blasting you with a ton of like ads and stuff, but it's either stuff I'm producing for all of you or things that I'm using. So I hope that helps. Burhan on Facebook, yes, the tool, it is super interesting. I just to kind of share on that one opportunity that is really standing out is for, especially for small businesses. So obviously as like a tech content creator, it's a lifesaver for me because that's what I'm doing outside of work is creating content. But for small businesses where they're like, hey, we need more presence, but like we don't have time to go posting stuff, or if we do, I can only post to our Facebook page or I can only post to our Instagram. I just say like, why don't you go set up all of these accounts, make your content, and then we'll just keep posting it for you. And then when you have time, you can add some more content. So that's the goal with it. And that's how I do my content strategy. All day coding, if possible, would be great if we could share a bit about your journey to becoming a principal engineer. What key aspects should I focus on at each level? I know seniority can be a relative term. Yeah, actually, you know what? I got a little bit of time. If you want, I can dive into that now. Because I gotta be fair, right? Like my experience is obviously going to be different than than other people. So the way that I got to where I am will look different. I can almost guarantee it than a majority of other people, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong or there aren't meta points that can be extracted from it. So I'm happy to kind of share that. So the question is, share a bit about your journey to becoming a principal engineer. So I'll share how I got to where I am, and I'll try to condense it. And then I will share for sort of for others, right? So distinction that I want to call out here is when we say principal engineer, there's two things going on here. One is a level and one is a role. Principal is the level, engineer, like software engineer, is the role. I am technically not a principal software engineer. I am a principal engineering manager. And I'm not saying that because engineering manager is better or something. It's just a different role. It's at the same level as a principal engineer, but my days at work now, I don't write code anymore. Principal engineer is writing a ton of code still. So a lot of my effort is shifted into different areas, which do not involve me literally writing code and committing it. So I write code and commit it all the time outside of work for my own stuff, but not at work. So for me, how did I go about going to principal? I was a job jumper. I jumped once after 8 years, but so the way that this looked for me was that I had basically managed teams for 8 years. So my entire professional career outside of my 6 internships, which is 2 years of experience, truly at like real companies, but my 8 years after university for me were managing teams and writing code. So when I talk about this type of thing from a management perspective, and I know your questions about, I think more about like the principal level kind of thing, but I think this ties into it. So from a management perspective, I think it's, people will disagree with this, but I would be happy to debate people on this until I'm blue in the face. But you, as an engineering manager, there's a lot of time that's dedicated to people, and I don't think people realize how much time. Because you can say, "Oh, I can manage teams and I can still write code," and my argument is, well, you're probably not managing your teams as well as you think. And you might say, "Oh, you're just not being effective with it." And I've been doing it for 12 years, and I have lived and breathed for 8 of those years writing code and managing teams. I've managed teams of over 13 people. I've managed 2 teams totaling around 13 people, and writing code at the same time. The way that this worked, and this was why it's tying into the principal level thing, is I literally worked 60 to 80 hours a week for 8 years. It worked because I almost doubled my work. That's how it works. It's 2 jobs. Developing software, writing the code is a different job than managing teams. That's it. End of story. Now, can you mix those things? Are there hybrid scenarios? 100%. I just told you I lived it for 8 years, right? It worked really well in the beginning in small teams. So when I had small prototyping teams and I only had, say, 3 to 5 people reporting to me, it made a lot of sense to be coding alongside them. Why? Well, I had time to manage them, really hands-on, and work with them, and that was good because there was only a few people. My scope that I was focused on in terms of a manager, like the product area, narrow, right? The code was green field, like we're building stuff from scratch, so I can be there alongside the team contributing. And it's a startup, so we're also in this mode where everyone's wearing different hats to get stuff done. All of these things made it very effective for me to be coding as an engineering manager. It just simply does not scale as you try to improve as an engineering manager. So, all day coding, your question about being principal level. After my 8 years of experience, the company was called Magnet Forensics. After 8 years of experience there, I had probably worked like closer to like 12 to 14 years just from the amount of work that was put in. And I'm not saying that like I'm not, I don't mean for that to sound like I'm bragging about it, because that's not a healthy thing to do. I'm simply stating that that's how much work went in. So when I was interviewing, I had tons of different experiences. And again, that's not me trying to brag about it. It just meant that when I went in for like behavioral interviews and things like that, tell me about a time with a difficult teammate. Yep, no problem. Tell me about a time you had to, deal with an employee that was underperforming. And I would say, sure. Would you like me to tell you about times where I was able to help them make it through, or times where we had to manage people out because they were not interested anymore? Like, it was a startup that scaled from like 8 people to like over 250 in the time I was there. So we saw everything, and I got to live through all of that. So my point in my journey was that reaching principal, I didn't go through Microsoft to reach principal. I had all of these experiences, and truly when I went to interview, they were like, you're at this level. And I don't think it was an accident. And again, I'm saying these things for transparency, not like I don't want to sound cocky or that I'm bragging about it, because it's not my intention. But I don't think it was an accident that this happened at Microsoft, because at Amazon, I applied to Microsoft and Amazon at the exact same time. I had 3 offers from Amazon at the same level as Microsoft. So two tech companies were able to see my background, my experiences, and apply that. So all day coding, when you're asking about this from a principal engineer perspective, if we're talking about, especially if your course of trajectory is at the same company and not jumping between companies, it truly goes back to scope of impact and your circle of influence. So being able to consistently show that you are working on projects that have large business impact, that are multiple people, that are difficult challenges that you need to sort of get other people from different teams from part of your org to work on. The other factor, it sounds kind of weird, it's almost like a side effect, is like, if you're doing work at that level that's that impactful, the engineering managers from the other teams that you're working with, like peripheral to you, like maybe you're not talking with them directly, but you're working with their employees, like they should have a pretty good solid understanding of the work you're doing, because it's that visible and that impactful. But it's sustained, right? I think some people don't realize that, one, and I think we're all kind of guilty of this. We're looking for like, tell me the thing to do so I can check the box to get the next level. And once you're sort of in the senior band and principal and staff kind of level, it's different names, different places, you really need to be able to demonstrate that like you can take on these big things without dropping the ball on the other stuff. So you're still helping mentor the people on the team. You're still improving your team's processes. Like, you have all of this stuff still going on, and you are routinely demonstrating that you can deliver on these big impactful projects. So again, my experience, I was able to show that from going through this startup. I could explain basically every step of the way in this startup's growth, like the different areas that I had to touch and I was responsible for. So that's how it worked for me. And I hope my sort of more generic answer is still helpful for like a general software engineering journey. If you are switching into a company, so say you're not yet at principal or staff or whatever, and you're like, okay, if I switch to a company, how can I apply for that? These are the types of experiences you'll want to share, right? You're going to want to talk about those big cross-team efforts where you were truly leading what was going on, describe why that was so impactful, like the business impact. But that's how I would suggest navigating that. So let me know if that makes sense. And that's a brief history of how I got to where I'm at. Okay, I tried to architect this on Facebook. I tried to architect a microservice 2 years ago, and it gave me a really hard time. Now it's in production. I've learned a lot from it, but what is a pain in the butt? There we go. Yeah, the pressure and expectations were high, but I think it's good to be exposed at least for some time. Yeah, exactly right. Now, let's not focus on whether microservice or monolith is the right or wrong thing here. Like, beside the point. Sounds like from this comment, you did something that you were uncomfortable with, right? You tried to design a microservice that went into production, so it's being used, and sounds like you're new to this, right? So yeah, that's gonna be uncomfortable. And yeah, that might have been challenging, but, and I can't say this for you, but I imagine that you went through that experience and you learned a ton from it. I would hope you did, right? Because now in the future, you might be able to make a decision and say, I mean, right in the beginning, should we make a microservice, or did we learn enough from that it's not a good fit? Should it be a monolith, a modular monolith, however you'd like to go build them? Or, okay, no, it still makes sense. It's a microservice, but what did we learn? Like, what went wrong? What could we do better? What was really good about this that we can try to make sure we lean into? So I can guarantee, I think, that from your experience, it was uncomfortable, but you probably learned a ton. So I hope that's the case. And thank you for sharing that. All right, folks. I'm going to give a couple more seconds as I ramble here, but there's I don't know, like a 20-second delay in the chat. So if you have more questions, I'm happy to stay on. So please feel free to ask away. These are great questions. So if you have more like that, I'm happy. If you're finding value in them, like, I'm happy to answer. But otherwise, I will be signing off here. Unfortunately, it's another week where I don't have a coding live stream in the morning. So typical schedule for me is that I am trying to get this stream. It's at 9 o'clock, and the evening goes usually from 9 to 11. I'm going to cut it short today. And then in the morning, I usually do like a 7 to 9 a.m. And that one's like hands-on coding, but got a lot of stuff going on. Tomorrow in the morning, I have to get my SUV dropped off for an AC fix because it's been an absolute furnace in there. So got to do that. And then I had a lot of stuff, and I still do have a lot of stuff. Launching that reflection course is a big load off of my plate, which is good. But I still do have another course that I am working on, and this will be revealed very soon. This is the course that I'm most excited for, and in a direction that I'm the most excited for. So again, if you enjoy my content, the way that I try to teach topics, I think that you'll be interested in this. And I will say, if you're not even a C# or .NET developer, this still might be a very, very interesting opportunity to tune into. So all day coding, thanks a lot, makes sense to me. It seems at the end of the day, what matters most is real experience and expertise. Yeah, the time that you put into solving real problems and making an impact. Yeah, and being able to articulate that in your resume and to the interviewers, that's really where it's going to stand out. Everything else will follow. That's right. Keep going and good luck with that. Awesome. Thanks, Baran. Okay, folks, I think that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you found some of this helpful. Again, I try to do these 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time on Mondays. This one's just a little bit shorter, so I apologize for that. If you want to know generally what I'm going to be talking about in these live streams, the newsletter is weekly.devleader.ca. I will just drop that back into the chat if you are interested. There it is. So you can check that out. Usually the Monday night stream topics will be on the newsletter topic. And then the coding stuff, I have to get more creative for. It can be pretty embarrassing to code live stream. It's a lot more fumbling than you would see in a YouTube video, that's for sure, but it's a lot of fun. So thanks again, folks. I do appreciate it, and I will see you next time. So take